We are going to start with our Bible study as we've been doing the last couple of weeks. It's my turn to lead the discussion, and we are going to take a look at John 14, verses 1 through 14. This is referred to as the farewell discourse, as Jesus begins to prepare his disciples for his departure in this life, and what they are to do after he's gone. Just as a point to bring you up to speed a little bit, since we did John last week, what's happened in the last couple of chapters, we know that Jesus was ticking off. We're getting the religious leaders very angry about what he was doing, and they were feeling very threatened. So they started this plot to kill him. And
where? Oh, here.
Jesus enters Jerusalem, right, as we know, from Palm Sunday. And along the way, Jesus is performing more signs and miracles, so he is getting more and more known. And then Jesus has the Last Supper, where he washes his disciples' feet and gives them a commandment, that love your neighbor commandment. So this takes place right after the Last Supper. Now, the interesting thing with John is the only gospel that has this discourse, which is a period of time where Jesus is telling the disciples what's going to happen and preparing them for when he's not there. The other gospels go from the Last Supper right to the garden scene. So we kind of have this little bit of an interlude here of the next two readings. So next week's reading from John kind of continues that discourse. So it's interesting what John has here for us. So what I thought we would do is have somebody who would like to read John 14, 1 through 14. And then I was able to find a nice short YouTube video from our old friend, Adam Hamilton, who will talk about the discourse here. And he'll kind of go back to the Last Supper and kind of bring us more into chapter 14 of John. So I thought maybe it would be great to hear him again. Welcome, Sheila.
Hi.
Who would like to read? Who would like to read?
I'll read it.
All right.
Okay. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am, and you know the way to where I am going. No, we don't, Lord, Thomas said. We have no idea where you're going. So how can we know the way? Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. If you had really known me, you would know who my Father is. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father and we will be satisfied. Jesus replied, have I been with you all this time, Philip, and yet you still don't know who I am? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. So why are you asking me to show him to you? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words I speak are not my own, but my Father who lives in me does his work through me. Just believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or at least believe because of the work you have seen me do. I tell you the truth, anyone who believes in me will do the same works I have done, and even greater works, because I am going to be with the Father. You can ask for anything in my name, and I will do it, so that the Son can bring glory to the Father. Yes, ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it.
Praise be to God for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we get into our questions, let me Let's get to our friend here, Mr. Hamilton. And when I saw that, I said, oh, good, we know him.
Right.
Um, let me stop sharing here for a second. It's easier to get to my desktop. Here we go.
Oh.
Okay, now I'm going to get to my library. Okay, now we're going to share.
Oh, that's cute.
Okay, everybody see?
Yep.
Now we do.
Continue in our study of John's Gospel. We're going to come to the farewell discourse of Jesus. Several years ago, our staff parish committee at Church of the Resurrection challenged me and encouraged me to prepare a sermon on video to play in the event of my death. This was a part of the contingency plan in case I were to die. And, it can be a little narcissistic thinking about yourself and your death, but I did try to think, okay, what would I want the people of the church to remember if I died? I've been their pastor 25 years. What would I want them to remember? And I focused the sermon on our mission and our vision and my hopes and dreams for them as a congregation and why we started the church, and really tried to challenge them. This is what I expect you to be about, even in my absence. And when we come to John chapters 13 through 17, we really see Jesus doing the same thing with his disciples. It was the Last Supper, and he's giving his farewell discourse, his final charge to his disciples. Matthew, Mark, and Luke don't talk about this. They just give us Jesus' institution of the Lord's Supper. That doesn't happen in John's Gospel. Instead, he gives them an example, he gives them a commandment, and he gives them a promise, especially in chapters 13 and 14. So the example was he washes his disciples' feet. And this was the role of the humblest of slaves. A Jewish slave was not meant to do this for a Jewish master. It was only Gentile slaves that were called upon to wash the feet of their Jewish masters. And so this was the lowest job one could possibly have. And Jesus takes on the lowest job that one could have, and he washes his disciples' feet. And he says, I've set you an example that you might do what I've done. And he's trying to teach them that our task, if we're his followers, is to live with humility. In the Greco-Roman world, honor was really important. That was one of the highest virtues, was honor. Jesus turns it on its head, and he says one of the highest virtues is for somebody in this station in life to take several steps down and to look to see, how do I serve my employees? How do I serve my coworkers? How do I serve my neighbors? How do I serve my spouse? How do I live a life of humble service? So Paul would tell us that we should think more of other people than we do of ourselves, that we should do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility to think of others as better than ourselves. This is what Jesus is teaching when he washes the disciples' feet. Then after he washes their feet, he says, I give you a new command, that you should love one another, just as I have loved you. And the example of what that love looks like was the foot washing that he just done. He had just loved them by washing their feet. He says, now what I've done for you, you should do for one another. And when I think about that, I think of plenty of examples I see in my own congregation and how they live a life of sacrificial love. I think of the people who've given the blood drives and the people who've been bone marrow transplant donors. I think of the people who regularly serve in the inner city in mission and ministry. I think of the people on a daily basis wake up in the morning and say, Lord, here I am, please use me today. And when they see somebody who needs a word of encouragement or a blessing or someone that needs them to take a little time to care for them, this is how they seek to live their lives, to love one another, to serve one another. Recently, I was at the movie theater, and I saw one of our members in the men's restroom, and he was in there with another man who was he was paralyzed from the waist down, and he was helping this man. I watched him as he helped him into the stall in the men's bathroom, and then as he helped him get ready so he could go to the bathroom, and then as he helped get him cleaned up, and then sent him on his way. And I saw this man's wife sitting outside waiting for him, and I looked at her and I said, I've always admired your husband. But today, when I watched him with gentleness and love caring for this other man in the most humble of ways, my admiration and respect for him went sky high. He modeled for me in the men's restroom what it means to wash another's feet, what it means to love one another as Christ has loved us. And the last thing that Jesus does in John chapter 14, after washing the disciples' feet, is he says to them at the table, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I'll come back for you, that you might be with me where I am. And in my Father's house, there are plenty of places to dwell. There's no shortage of rooms. And one of the things I just mentioned to you here that stands out to me about that is that Jesus says, if I go, I will come back for you. I've been with many people as they were dying. And this image of Jesus coming back for us, that he's the one, not his angels, but that he's the one who stands there waiting for us. And in that moment, when we breathe our last, he reaches out and takes his hand and says, come with me. Come to my Father's house where there's plenty of room. I love that picture of who Jesus is. He calls us to serve one another. He calls us to love one another. And he calls us to trust in him and not be afraid, even in the face of death. And that's part of what Jesus said in his farewell discourse to his disciples and to us. So may you live a life of love and service and trusting in him, never afraid, knowing that he's waiting for you. Amen.
Okay, that was our old friend Adam Hamilton.
That was very good.
Yeah.
The example, I love the way he said the example, the command, and the promise. He took three takeaways from that, and then was able to expound upon it. It was very good.
Yeah, we'll get into more of that as we get into the scripture. But let me get back to the PowerPoint. Guide our way. So, what did the text say to the people for whom it was written?
For me, it's kind of like a wake-up call, because Jesus says, have you not seen all the things that I've already done, and you don't believe in what I can do and that I'll be back?
Mm-hmm. Yep. How do you think they were feeling at that time?
Well, he says, let not your heart be troubled. So they were definitely troubled about the way things were going.
Right.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And
by the time John was writing his gospel, church was already being heavily persecuted. So I think it must have been encouraging to them to know that Jesus is still anticipating and engaged in it.
yeah, it gave people some comfort. You think about, and we'll see this in the scripture, there's a lot of questions that come up, with what was going on then, what's going to come of us?
Mm.
Yeah, right.
Why is this happening? Why all this animosity and persecution? And Jesus gives us an answer, and we'll hear Philip's response in a moment. But anything else of what you think the text was saying to the people at that time?
I think he was trying to calm their fears of what was to come.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And they probably didn't totally understand what was going to happen, or at least the good news about it. They just probably thought and they heard I'm leaving, I'm going away.
Yeah.
And I think we get locked into fear. Even today, we get locked into fear, and our minds don't think very well.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think of the hymn that we sang yesterday, "Do not be afraid, I am with you," was the refrain, again and again.
Absolutely. Yep. And I believe that hymn is coming up, maybe not this Sunday, but the next Sunday, I think. So it's probably very appropriate for this part of John's Gospel. Any other comments? Okay. So what did the text mean to the people for whom it was written?
Trust in Jesus. That's what he wanted them to know. To
Mm.
that he was God, and
Right? Trust in me. You're not.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
that no one comes to the Father except through Jesus. You know, you have to, don't forget about Jesus. Yeah, who he was.
So,
I think,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think he's also a little frustrated because they weren't getting what he was trying to tell them.
Oh.
Mm.
He kept saying, have I not been with you this whole time? Do you still not understand what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
They're asking questions why, like Philip said, how can we come where you're going? They're asking questions of why, and he basically responds with telling them who he is, right?
Yeah.
Tells them who he is. Any other comments?
I think in the very beginning where he says, believe in God, believe also in me. I think there's
Yeah.
a sense of the word believe, which
Mm.
I think Patsy said, it involves trust. It is more than just intellectual belief. And sometimes I think people get hung up on the idea, is Jesus really the Son of God, and so on, and how do you know
Yeah.
that, and how do you prove that, and so on and so forth. But I think what Jesus is saying, especially to his disciples, is trust me.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Right.
You know?
Mm.
Don't just, in that sense, believe in me, right?
Yeah. And Jesus was telling them the way it is. You know, this is what you have to do. You believe in me, and then you've seen the Father, and
So Jesus is giving them himself, basically,
Mm.
right? And he's saying that, you will know God when you know me, and God is love.
right.
And I've been showing that love
Mm.
throughout the 3 years of my ministry.
Mhm.
And I think that's important to keep focus on the final verses of the whole thing. He's telling them that whoever believes in me will do the works that I have been doing. They'll do even greater things than these,
Right.
because I'm going to the Father. He's really kind of setting them up. It's like as Adam Hamilton referred to it as kind of a mission statement. You're going to be doing. Don't just, in other words, you can take comfort, but be ready to do something, because you're going to be able to do great things because I'm going to the Father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we often forget in the church. It seems like a lot of times, I don't want to get into the application part, but in that generation, perhaps, maybe they were starting to waver, Jesus, you did all this stuff, you did all these miracles and so on and so forth. But look at where we are now. We're being persecuted, being beaten up, we're being lit on fire, we're being thrown to the lions, all that kind of stuff. And Jesus is addressing that directly.
Right. So that kind of makes sense to us even today. We were talking earlier this morning how people are really tired of this quarantine business, and they're letting the guard down. They may not be as diligent with their masks, and they're just sick and tired of being, kept away. And they might have been feeling the same thing. Keep the faith. But, my neighbors are getting pulled out of their house. They're getting sent to prison,
Right.
This has not been good. So so this is like really a boost, I think, right? A big confidence boost for them. Hey, you're going to do some great things.
Yeah.
And I'll be back, right? And I'll be back.
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave you. You're going to have a place no matter what happens. You're going to have a place.
I think also in the political climate, as you mentioned, people being taken from their houses, which we haven't gotten to in USA right now, but certainly happened over in China. But the thought that they were going to face some pretty strong opposition,
Yeah.
and they needed encouragement. So as I heard the text being retold, as people said, this is what Jesus said, then perhaps it helped them to put it in a larger context and say, well, you know, that, yeah, Jesus knew this was going to happen.
Yep. Absolutely. So how does this text relate to our contemporary setting? We kind of touched upon that a little bit a second ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Continuing to put your trust in God, with everything that's uncertain right now, knowing that, that as long as we believe and hold steadfast to that, we'll know that he'll come again for us. And if we have the anxieties and worries about the virus and all of these other uncertainties that we have in the world, continuing to believe in him and to have faith and trust in him, and hold steadfast, that will get us through.
And
people today are putting other people ahead of themselves. The nurses and the doctors and, therapists and stuff, and they want to help people. So I guess, they believe in the Lord.
Right. So what was that commandment? Love one another as I have loved you.
Right.
Adam Hamilton, described how Jesus was the lowest of servants and washed their feet as an example of how we need to be with each other. And that was love. That was really true love. I guess you could call that agape love, right, Pastor?
Yeah.
And we are to do likewise. I keep thinking about anxiety and like Philip asked the question, and he's being anxious too.
Yeah.
And so we always have a lot of these questions. Why are these things happening? Why did that person die? And so in a way, Jesus is not answering why somebody died, but he's really giving us the good news or the promise that I'll come back for you.
Right.
And a dwelling place, is another word for a resting place where we can lie down in green pastures. If we go back to Psalm 23, sitting along, laying along still waters, getting everything that we need. And that also comes to the trust that you guys have mentioned. Definitely the trust.
I was talking before about the statement Jesus makes here about, let's see, he says, whoever believes in me will do the works that I've been doing, and they will do even greater things than these because I'm going to the Father, and so on. And it reminded me of a great missionary of the 19th century, William Carey, and he's quoted as having said, "Expect great things from God, attempt great things for God." And I thought that's really kind of a lot of what Jesus is saying here. And I think, it seems so long in recent years, like the church has been on retreat. We don't expect great things from God, and we seldom attempt great things for God anymore. At least, sometimes when I'm kind of depressed, that's where my mind goes, to say that, there used to be a time when people thought it was because we believed in God that, we might be able to get something accomplished. And that we don't have to always be on the defensive or always be in retreat.
Right.
Or decline,
Mm.
I really like that quote. Let me make sure I got it down right. Expect great things from God and attempt great things for God.
Correct.
Mm.
William Carey, Carey.
First name again?
William.
William.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm.
You know, there's too many people today that may be expecting great things, but they don't attempt to do them
Hmm.
for God. Like right now, we know we've got nurses and doctors and people at the front lines that they're doing great things for God, and they do it for us. They're doing it for God too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I guess the one good thing that can come out of this whole part of our history is maybe it'll get people thinking on those lines again. You know, what can I do for others instead of just thinking of myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, William Carey, just for your information, was an English Baptist missionary and a Reformed Baptist minister. And he was known as a father of modern missions. And he founded the Baptist Missionary Society. And while that, you know, we hear that and we think, well, he's Baptist, so that's different from us. But the fact of the matter is that the whole mission point of view of sending out people to other nations and so on with the gospel was really not a major effort in the church until the 19th century. And that's when William Carey, said those things. And indeed, he went and he attempted great things for God. And a great deal was accomplished because of what he was willing to do. He translated the Bible into different languages. He went to India. That's where he went, and that sort of thing.
Nice. Any other thoughts?
I just want to mention that, God didn't promise us that life was going to be easy, but he did promise that he would go with us all along the way. And, through this pandemic and everything that we're going through, he has doctors and nurses and a lot of other people doing food pantries and whatever have really stepped up to the plate. And those are the angels that God's sending to us.
Yeah.
He didn't promise that nobody's going to die or anything like that. We are going to have deaths and we are going to have complications. But he did say that he would be with us through all of this, through all of life.
With this pandemic and everything going on, I don't expect great things from God. I don't think I ever did. But I hoped for great things. And today I'm grateful for a sunny day. I just, I'm learning to appreciate the little things in life instead of being busy and on the go all the time. It's changed my perception.
It slowed us down.
Yeah.
It slowed us down to appreciate what we have. Absolutely. I went to, just a sidebar, I went to get my car inspected this morning and I sat outside the mechanic's place. And there was a gentleman there that's been married for 53 years, just celebrated his anniversary. However, he hasn't been with his wife for a month because his wife is staying at his daughter's house. His daughter and son-in-law are both doctors at Stony Brook. And they are on the front lines, and they don't even, when they come home, they haven't hugged their children. They have 3 children where the grandmother now is staying. They haven't been able to hug them for 3 weeks.
No.
It's just been, he said, it's just amazing. He says, everybody, like Eric, you were saying about people getting frustrated with social distancing at your pastor's meeting this morning. We have to continue that. We have to, we have to trust in some of the stuff that's coming out. And trust that God is there leading us along.
Thank you for that.
I'm just reading here a little bit more about William Carey. I'd like to share it with you because I think it's really good stuff. Stranger in a Strange Land, it says, Thomas and Carey, Thomas was a friend of his, had grossly underestimated what it would cost to live in India, and Carey's early years there were miserable. When Thomas deserted the enterprise, Carey was forced to move his family repeatedly as he sought employment that could sustain them. Illness racked the family, and loneliness and regret set it. I am in a strange land, he wrote, no Christian friend, a large family, and nothing to supply their wants. But he also retained hope. Well, I have God, and his word is sure. He learned Bengali with the help of a pundit, and in a few weeks began translating the Bible into Bengali and preaching to small gatherings. When Carey himself contracted malaria, and then his 5-year-old Peter died of dysentery, it became too much for his wife, Dorothy, whose mental health deteriorated rapidly. She suffered delusions, accusing Carey of adultery and threatening him with a knife. She eventually had to be confined to a room and physically restrained. This is indeed the valley of the shadow of death to me, Carey wrote, though characteristically added, but I rejoice that I am here, notwithstanding, and God is here. In October 1799, things finally turned. He was invited to locate in a Danish settlement in Serampore near Calcutta. He was now under the protection of the Danes, Lutherans, by the way, who permitted him to preach legally in the British-controlled areas of India. All of his missionary work had been illegal. Carey was joined by William Ward, a printer, Joshua and Hannah Marshman, teachers. Mission finances increased considerably as Ward began securing government printing contracts. They opened schools for children, and he began teaching. After 7 years of missionary labor, he baptized his first convert, 7 years. And 2 months later, he published his first New Testament in Bengali. This and subsequent editions, he and his colleagues laid the foundations for the study of modern Bengali, which up to this time had been an unsettled dialect. He continued to expect great things. Over the next 28 years, he and his pundits gathered the entire Bible, translated the entire Bible into India's major languages, Bengali, Oriya, Marathi, Hindi, Assamese, and Sanskrit, and parts of 209 other languages and dialects. He also sought social reform in India, including the abolition of infanticide, widow burning, and assisted suicide. He and Marshman founded Serampore College, a divinity school for Indians, and a liberal arts college. By the time he died, he had spent 41 years in India without a furlough. His mission could count only some 700 converts in a nation of millions, but he had laid an impressive foundation of Bible translations, education, and social reform. His greatest legacy was in the worldwide missionary movement of the 19th century that he inspired. Missionaries and various names, including David Livingstone, among thousands of others, were impressed not only by his example, but by his words. Expect great things, attempt great things. The history of 19th century Protestant missions, in many ways, an extended commentary on that phrase. So I wanted to read that to you because it's quite a story, and and he faced malaria himself. He had to endure that,
and he lost a child.
Yeah, lost a child.
Yeah. Well, all of Jesus' apostles, they met a horrible death, except John, I guess, in Patmos. He died 95, I think he was, of naturals. But the other apostles, were crucified and whatnot, and buried and burned and whatever.
Yeah, and that goes with the first lesson for Sunday about Stephen, who was the first one who actually died.
He was the first martyr.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, in terms of our setting today,
Yeah.
Are we expecting great things from God? Can we attempt great things for God with the resources we've got and the future that's ahead of us?
Yeah, we should be.
We have to trust in the future because we don't know what the future is going to be, but we know that God holds that.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
God holds the future, and we just have to trust that He's going to lead us.
Yeah.
I always say there's a reason for this, and somewhere it'll be discovered, I guess. The reason will be discovered. I don't know what to expect.
One way that I like to say that is that God will make something out of this.
Yes, exactly. Right.
You know?
That's a good way to put it. Right.
And it may look like a lump of clay, but God can make something out of it.
It'll
Definitely.
be a lump of clay that we're going to have to mold.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
Well, actually, God is molding the clay if we allow him.
yeah, it's God's work, our hands, as these T-shirts say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't help but wonder how many people are coming back to God and turning
Yeah,
back
that's true.
to all of this, and that's something that's very positive out of all of it, including myself, as I stated
Well,
when I first joined. You know,
Mhm.
I think that so many people, for whatever reasons in their life, you know, find things, but you know, I think that there are so many people that I've spoken to that are finding their faith again, that
Yeah.
might have gone astray, and I think that that's something that's very positive, and I hold on to going through all of this.
Yeah,
And
Eric, what do you think it is about this that causes people to do that?
Me personally, I was looking for peace, the peace that I used to have from reading the scripture and growing up with the community of the church and other people having that same like-mindedness and
Right.
taking away the anxiety and knowing that the Lord is my refuge and my strength and coming back to that. And I think that sometimes when we go through life, we forget that, sadly. And I really think that when you find community together and you are looking for that support and that trust in something when everything else feels like it's spiraling out of control, that you can always come back to God. And as long as you believe in that. And I think that's what I've held on to an awful lot to get me through personally.
Yeah.
You know, Eric, that was a word that you used there, community, was the point I was going to make next.
Yeah.
You know, in times of fear, you know, God, you know, gives us some peace, like you said, but he also gives us resiliency,
Right.
that we can get through things, but we get through things
Together.
making connections with each other.
Right.
And helping each other and crying with each other and sharing with each other. So we know that we're not alone. Yeah, God's with us, carrying us along the way, but you know, we're all feeling the same way, and that's got to be very soothing.
It is very comforting because when I cry and you're recording it means a lot to me that I have other Christians out there that are listening, and we're all going through this together. We all have different needs and different expectations and everything else, but we're all in this together. And the support I get from all of these is great. You know, it shows me that God is here.
So yesterday in one of our meetings, somebody was expressing, you know, some concerns, and well, I got a phone call. I think I mentioned it earlier, from somebody who listened to our hymn sing. And it was like, this is what I needed. I needed to hear this. I really enjoyed it, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, those were probably soothing words for the people who put that together. But we're also helping other people by singing, you know. That's a whole nother topic, you know, how singing can help us. But,
you know, and
we
even
can't
though
do this
they're not,
alone.
right, and even though they're not joining us at that particular moment, there's a lot of people out there that are going on the internet and looking up everything that's on YouTube, and you know, they're finding peace on looking up all those things, you know, and listening to everything.
Because quite frankly, I don't watch I stopped watching the news because I just get aggravated.
Right, I know, I do too.
I did want to listen to Cuomo this morning, but I guess I missed it. Because he usually tells us what's going on. But, you know, people probably is tired of hearing the political stuff, and they're seeking out this stuff that really can give us peace.
Right.
I think one of the things that in the church that we need to pay attention to right now is the fact that, you know, if the people that Erica's referring to, you know, begin to show up, we need to be prepared to take the next step and reach out to them. And become companions or even leaders or, guides for people so that they can grow. The lesson for tomorrow from First Peter talks about like newborn babes desire the pure milk that you may grow, and I think there is that sense of which those who are engaged right now in this conversation, you might say, are the ones who are going to be able to help others and do the same and to participate in that in the future. And unfortunately, in the past anyway, we've had a tendency to say, oh, I can't do that. Somebody else has to do that. Somebody else has to be the leader of that group or this activity or whatever. And I think that, this is a time when we're starting to think that, no, maybe God needs to raise up some of us in leadership roles for the sake of the whole and for the sake of the world.
Right.
Yep, I agree. He agrees. Two more happy Bible goers, Bible study people, Bible study dogs.
Oh.
All good.
Very cute, Donna.
Okay, we're nearing the end of our time. Did anybody have a last thought they want to share here before we close? Okay, thank you for joining us this afternoon and for your thoughts and this is really good. I like this. Like I told Pastor, it's been a good experience for me to really dig into our scriptures every Sunday and
I did want to say something.
Go ahead.
My dogs were barking and I couldn't. Everything that's been going, am I there? Am I unmuted?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you're unmuted.
With everything going on with Molly's family, first she passes away, and then within the week, her son-in-law and what her daughter is going through is horrific right now. And it's given me such terrible anxiety. It's like, I'm feeling like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. What else is going to happen? What else is going to happen? This is so important for me. I got to realize, that whatever happens and whatever is happening, I got to keep looking to the Word. I got to look for that strength. And I got to realize that no matter what it is, He's with us, with me. And I'm so questioning, why did this happen? I can't wrap my head around it. But like, who was it? Claudia, did you say? We'll find out at some point, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
That's what I keep
That's
telling
what I think.
myself.
Yeah.
So it's important in our anxiety that we don't isolate ourselves. I used to do that when I was younger. I would be stressed. I would isolate myself, and that's never good.
Right.
So keep coming to these things. Watch it on the internet if you're not here live, and sing along with us on Wednesday mornings. That would be great. So
and Sundays, of course.
Well, I just get it.
Well, that's it. If I don't make the live one, I always follow up.
YouTube.
I'm having a very hard time sleeping. I'm up half the night. I'm asleep. I'm awake. I'm this. So if I miss something, I try to catch it up later on.
That's the advantage of the internet.
Exactly. That's what's so great.
You know what I find in this time of go ahead.
I should tell you that beginning on Pentecost, which is May 31st, we're going to shift to the summer schedule with 2 worship times, 8:30 and 10:30. It won't change the format in terms of how we're putting things online, but those will be the times. 8:30 will be when we're live instead of 8 o'clock. So you can, any of you 8 o'clock people can sleep in another half hour.
Or maybe give some of us, encourage us to get up a little earlier, our 11 o'clock people, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, the idea there is that between the 8:30 service and the 10:30 service, there is a whole hour, and that hour can be used in many different ways, but at least for conversation and maybe for some some sharing of, where we are and what God is doing. So
Breakfast too.
Mm.
Okay, thank you again. Let's close with prayer, then I'll give you a quick preview for tomorrow. So let us pray. Almighty God, your Son, Jesus Christ, is the way, the truth, and the life. Give us grace to love one another, to follow in the way of his commandments, and to share his risen life with all the world. For he lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
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 Join us tomorrow. No.
that's next week.
Tomorrow, hold on.
Yeah, tomorrow.
1 Peter, chapter 22, chapter 2, verse 2 through 10. And then next week, if you don't join us tomorrow, I'll give you a preview for next week. Here we go. We'll have Acts 17, Psalm 66. We'll go to 1 Peter again, and then we'll continue on John 14, 15 to 21.
Okay.
That's
The
next
Holy
week.
Spirit.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bye,
God bless
everybody.
you all.
Okay, bye.
Go
God
in
bless.
peace.
Bye.
In there,
Go in
keep
peace
the
and
faith.
serve the Lord.
Thanks
Thank
be
you.
to God.
Thank you, Pastor Hill, and Mr. Eric.
Bye, Sheila.
Bye.
Paula.
Love
Bye.
you.